Hey everyone, it's Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today. So today we are talking about getting ready to go out to pasture. Now we're not quite there yet. We're going to be going out to pasture next weekend, so 7 days from today. But before we go out to pasture, there's a lot of things that we need to talk about, some preparation work that we need to do, and we need to talk about why and when do I decide to put the animals out to pasture. And so we're going to actually go out to the pasture. We're going to take a look, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is that I'm looking for to determine when the optimum time is to turn the animals out. Stay tuned to find out more. Hey, all right, so here we go. Do you like my shirt? Me too. Hey, you know what? If you go to the description below and you go to my friend Barb Barton over at Rural Bling, you can actually order one of these, and we're not making any profit off of this. I got a daytime job. I don't need your money. 100% of this goes to Barb. It's very affordable for t-shirts and sweatshirts. We like to keep the price low so everybody can partake. So without further delay, let's talk about the pasture. We're going to be heading out to the pasture today, and I'm going to be talking about pasture A and pasture B. So before we go out there, I want to show you on Mr. Dry Erase Board here what it is that I'm talking about. So for all intents and purposes, out front of our homestead here, we have an 8-acre parcel. We have 4 acres here and 4 acres here, and we have these separated into pasture A and pasture B. Now last year in 2020, we grazed on pasture A. And pasture B in 2020 was baling. Last fall of 2020, we overseeded. And what that means is we went through and we planted grass up and down. I planted a grass mix. No legumes, no clover, no alfalfa, anything like that. I just had someone come in and drill in various types of grass into this pasture. Now, this year in 2021, we're going to graze over here. And guess what? We're going to bale over here. And the reason for that is very simple. If I were to graze my animals on pasture A right now, and pasture A looks fantastic, pasture A looks fantastic. If I were to graze my animals over on this side, what's going to happen? Lots of things. Number one is all those little baby plants that are over in pasture A, they're going to rip them out by their roots. The sheep and the goats are going to reach down, they're going to grab a hold of that plant, and they're going to pull on it, and it is going to rip it out, roots and all, and I am going to end up with dirt over here. So the best thing to do is graze them on this pasture that's had about a year to develop from its overseeding. They can graze on this properly. I don't have to worry about them destroying it, and I am going to bale this. Now guess what? This fall, I'm going to overseed this pasture, and next year I'm going to graze this one and bale this one. And so we just keep flip-flopping back and forth. We overseed, give a chance to establish, bale, graze, and that's the way that we go. And what it does is it prevents the animals from destroying that hard work and investment that we put into our pasture. And you know what? You can do this on a very small lot. Imagine that this is an acre and this is an acre. You can do the same thing. You can flip-flop back and forth. Trust me when I say this, if you're going to invest the time and effort into overseeding or reseeding a pasture, you do not want to turn your animals out on that pasture until it has had time to properly establish itself. You will save yourself a lot of time and a lot of headaches. With that being said, we've had some questions recently about what does dry lotting mean and what does pasturing mean? Dry lotting is when you have your animals on a dirt lot and you are supplementing every single thing that they get. The goal is to dry lot is going to stay a dry lot and a pasture is going to stay a pasture. If you put your animals out on pasture before it's ready, they're going to eat it down to the ground and kill it, and then you're going to turn a beautiful pasture into a dry lot. With that being said, let's head out. We'll talk really quick about some of the steps that we take in preparing our animals for rotational grazing, and then we'll actually head out to the pasture itself. Let's head outside. All right, so here we are outside, and I want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the things that we do to prepare our animals for rotational grazing. This one here is a big one. This is my Sweet Licks block. It is a bloat guard block. I have a lot of clover out in my field. I have a lot of alfalfa out in my field, and those are known as legumes, and those legumes tend to bloat animals. When you hear about animals going out to pasture and bloating, it's not grass. It's clover and alfalfa primarily. Bird's foot trefoil does not tend to bloat. That's a whole nother subject. So, clover, alfalfa. This medication is what we consider a prophylactic. What a prophylactic means is it is preventative. This is no good once your animals are bloated. Once your animals are bloated, that's a whole other series, and that's a whole other video. This is to prevent bloating. It has medication that prevents bloating, and we like to give it to our animals about 1 week prior to turning out to pasture. The other thing that we always do, and we'll talk about this in next week's video, is we don't ever turn our animals out on pasture when they're hungry. We always feed them first, make sure that they're very full, and then we turn them out. Well, why do we do this? Well, we have our animals wintering over in what's known as a dry lot situation. Everything that they're getting from me. As soon as I turn them out on that pasture, they can eat as much as they want anytime that they want. So I want to make sure that I manipulate that and control that in a way that I don't put them out there when they're hungry and they eat too much, bloat up, and I could have potential health consequences. The other thing I have here is obviously my oral drench, and then I have some Dectomax here. This is what I use for worming prior to turning out to pasture. The reason that I use the Dectomax is because it controls a lot of things. It controls lice, it controls keds, it controls mange, and it controls gastrointestinal worms, with the exception of tapeworms. For those of you that want to use an all-natural choice, obviously the oral drench is the way to go. Make sure you check out our video on making a wormer out of copper sulfate right here. The bottom line is I want you to worm your animals. I want to make sure that they're clean before we turn them out to pasture. There's no reason ever to turn an animal out on pasture with a worm load. All they're going to end up doing is dropping worms out on your pasture, and you're going to create some long-term issues. So, again, before we turn them out, make sure we prophylactically treat them for bloat, don't send them out hungry, and treat them for worms. Good enough? Let's head out to the pasture. All right, so here we are out on pasture A. Now, as you recall, this is the pasture that I reseeded last fall. Now, my poor camera lady, Lindy, can I see that really quick? I'm going to turn this around and show you Lindy. There's poor Lindy. Hi, Lindy. So Lindy is going to be walking backwards. I just wanted to give a quick hello to my friend Lindy here. So poor Lindy's got to walk backwards as we go through the pasture. You know, this pasture looks great, and I know some of you are probably looking at this and you're thinking, why in the world would you not turn your animals out to pasture on this? And the reason behind that is exactly like I told you. Although it looks good, this orchard grass is coming up really good. If you come over here and look at this area right here. Look at this little baby grass and the little baby clover coming up. You know, the animals are going to go after this stuff first. And the sad thing is if I turn them out on this pasture too soon, or in this case, something that was just reseeded last fall, they're literally going to rip this out by the roots and they're going to destroy it. So, as we walk over to pasture B, you'll see exactly why I've waited about another week before I turn them out. And here's another example here in pasture A. You can see this row right here. See how this grass is still just very small. The clover is very small. This needs more time. You got to get out in your pasture. You got to look, and you got to make sure that it is ready before you turn those animals out. Just because you've got some plants that are fully developed and they're ready to go doesn't mean that it's ready for you to turn your animals out on. So I've got some markers out in my field that tell me when I'm on side A or side B. We're almost on side B right now. And if you look on side B here, you're gonna say, well, this looks ready to go. I mean, even the clover over here is substantially higher. And believe it or not, a week's worth of growth makes a heck of a difference. You can see how thick this clover is in here. Of course, you can also see why I would never want to turn my animals loose on this without some kind of preventative measure, because they're going to eat this up. And this clover, oh my goodness, clover is the #1 culprit when it comes to bloat in sheep and goats. But as interesting as this is and as ready to go as this looks, here's actually a little alfalfa right here. But if you move down here just a little short distance, we've got good clover, good clover, good clover. And then you get down here just a few feet further and we've got this going on. See this dirt? See all this open ground in here? See how this clover is just barely getting a chance to get started? This is definitely a no-go. This is a problem. What's going to happen if I were to get greedy? And I understand the appeal. You're thinking, man, I'm feeding my animals hay. It's costing me a fortune. I'm just going to turn them out as soon as possible. But the reality is if I were to turn these gals out this week, they're going to eat all this down to the dirt. They're going to destroy it. And in the long term, I'm going to end up hurting myself more than I'm going to help myself. So, patience is a virtue, as it is with all things. Give it time. Make sure that all of your plants grow in adequately. You give them enough chance to get established before you turn your animals out. I'm really excited. Next week, we're going to turn the animals out. We're going to start on our rotational grazing. And what I like about this year, about 2021, is we're going to be able to walk you through the process step by step by step. So this week we talked about what to do to prepare. Next week we're going to talk about the initial turnout, and then we will go from there. So with that being said, I am Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining us again today, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.